So there was a lot of questioning about the second shot to Paul.
What's up, Mob Crew? I'm Chris. In today's short video, we're talking about one of the jurors from the Alex Murdaugh trial who had recently done an interview. He had went to the Moselle property and went to the feed room and discovered a huge clue, which is something we talked about in a previous live show. So we're going to go over that and more in today's video. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, where we cover murder, mystery to the missing. So it's been over a week since the crazy Murdaugh trial has come to an end after 6 weeks of testimony and a short 3-hour deliberation that served Alex Murdaugh a guilty verdict and 2 life sentences. Some jurors have come forward and done some interviews with the media.
We just weren't sure yet. They might not have known answers to certain questions. So that's when it really took that 2 hours to kind of walk through something they might not understand, go back to the evidence, go back and see what somebody said about something, and answer those questions for those people. Like I said, it wasn't that they knew that he was not guilty, but they just weren't sure, and they needed the answers to those questions, and we were able to get those.
One juror in particular, James, went to the Moselle property and went inside the feed room because he was curious about the angle of how Paul was shot and had noticed something when he was in that room. One of the bigger mysteries to him and everybody else was how Paul was shot, specifically in the head. When Paul was standing a couple of feet inside the feed room, along with Alex, he was shot for the first time in the chest. But the second shot was such an odd upward angle and to the side a bit. So how could this happened? This is something that Steve and I looked into early on. Steve had noticed something on the ground in the doorway, which is the threshold. A threshold is something that is sometimes placed in door frames to allow doors to be sealed airtight or to prevent soil or water or snow from entering a room. The threshold in the feed room was at least an inch tall with no transition, so if someone was not paying attention, like if Alex was walking backwards or was even pushed back by the recoil of the shotgun from the first shot, could cause him to trip backwards, falling just outside the feed room, while Paul would stumble forward and try to escape out the room. And just as he's in the doorway and trying to exit to the left, since Alex fell a bit to the right, the second shot would be fired from the ground, explaining the odd upward angle, along with the buckshots and high velocity spatter that ended up on the upper left-hand side of the door frame. We, of course, had done a video on this. Since then, Jacob had noticed something in the feed room and came to the same conclusion.
So there was a lot of questioning about the second shot to Paul. And to me, the way that it was described and the way that it was portrayed, it just didn't look right. But what did make sense to me, and something that I'd made note of before we went to the Moselle property, because I didn't know that we were going to the Moselle property, but I was curious, is that, for one, I think that he would have been looking at Paul. And whenever we get out there, it's a very tight room, and there is about a 1 to 1.5 inch threshold at the base of that door. I think if he's looking at Paul and he's just shot a buckshot, which if you're not firm, it can rock you pretty good. I think he could have been unbalanced, and I think he could have tripped over that threshold, and that puts him on the ground shooting upward as Paul's coming out. And I think that makes sense to me for the angle of the shot.
And this would explain why the second shot was not straight on, but to the left side of Paul. Steve and I are further discovering new details and theories as to why Maggie and Paul weren't immediately executed, and we'll be releasing that in an upcoming live show. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Please consider supporting this channel by becoming a member or follow me on my Patreon page, and thank you so much for watching.